Want more HFY stories? Smash that subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications.
The station vigilance creaked like a dying beast, its metal groans echoing through the observation deck. Elias Vance stood before the panoramic viewport, his reflection superimposed over the swirling maw of a black hole. The event horizon wasn't a line but a bruise in space-time, distorting the light of distant stars into a kaleidoscope of dying colors. Behind him, the crew moved in a practiced silence, their faces gaunt, their eyes hollow. They'd been here for 7 cycles, orbiting the abyss, waiting for the inevitable. Elias adjusted his oxygen mask, the plastic scratching against his weathered skin. At 63, he was the oldest human on the station, and the only one who'd survived the first encounter with the Luminari. They called themselves Star Feeders, a fitting name for beings that consumed radiation like humans breathed air. The Luminari weren't malevolent, not in the way humans understood it. They were forces of nature, like supernovas or black holes themselves. But their hunger was absolute, and they'd turned the vigilance into a hunting ground. "Commander, the energy readings are spiking," a young voice crackled over the comms. It was Lena Petrova, the station's astrophysicist. Her fingers flew across a console, her knuckles white. "They're converging on us again." Elias didn't turn. "How many?" "3. Same as last time." Her voice trembled, but she forced it steady. "They're toying with us, sir, feeding on our emissions before the main course." The Luminari didn't attack with weapons. They fed. The Vigilance's power systems, its communications, even the crew's biosigns, all were radiation. To the Luminari, the station was a smorgasbord. Elias had watched them once, towering constructs of pure light, their forms shifting like auroras. They didn't speak. They resonated, a low hum that vibrated in the bones. "Cut non-essential power," Elias ordered. "Shut down everything but life support and comms." "Aye, sir," Lena replied. The lights dimmed, plunging the deck into near darkness. The only illumination came from the viewport and the glow of the consoles. Elias felt the cold seep into his bones, a familiar ache. The Luminari's presence was a pressure in the air, a weight that made breathing harder. He remembered the first time they'd come. 20 years ago, on a deep space research vessel. The Luminari had arrived silently, drawn by the ship's fusion core. They'd consumed it in minutes, leaving the crew adrift in the void. Elias had been the sole survivor, floating in an escape pod, listening to the Luminari's resonant hum as they feasted on the wreckage. The sound had haunted him ever since. "Commander, they're getting closer," Lena whispered. "The hull temperature is rising." Elias finally turned. His crew looked to him, their fear palpable. They saw an old man, a relic of a bygone era. They didn't know what he knew. They didn't understand that the Luminari weren't just a threat, they were a personal threat. And personal debts had a way of being repaid, even across light years. "Prepare the Event Horizon Protocol," Elias said, his voice low and steady. The Event Horizon Protocol was the station's last resort, a desperate gambit designed to exploit the black hole's gravitational pull. It involved venting the station's remaining energy in a focused burst, creating a distortion in space-time that would, theoretically, repel the Luminari. But it was a one-way ticket. Once activated, the Vigilance would be torn apart, its crew left to drift into the black hole's infinite darkness. "Sir, are you sure about this?" Lena asked, her eyes wide. "The math says it might work, but the risk." "The risk is we die anyway," Elias cut in. He walked to the main console, his movements deliberate. "This isn't about survival anymore. It's about revenge." Lena flinched. "Revenge? Against them?" "Against them," Elias confirmed. He'd spent 20 years studying the Luminari, learning their patterns, their weaknesses. They were creatures of energy, bound by the laws of physics. And physics, Elias had discovered, could be weaponized. The Luminari were closing in now. Their hum grew louder, a physical presence that made the station's lights flicker. Elias could feel them, a collective consciousness probing the Vigilance, tasting its energy. They were curious, not afraid. To them, humans were insignificant, fleeting specks of matter. "Initiate the protocol," Elias ordered. Lena hesitated. Then her fingers moved across the console. A low whine filled the air as the station's power systems redirected. Outside the viewport, the Luminari shimmered, their forms coalescing into towering pillars of light. They weren't attacking yet. They were waiting. Elias watched them, his jaw tight. He remembered the escape pod, the cold, the silence. He remembered the Luminari's resonance as they consumed his crew, one by one. The sound had been a symphony of destruction, and he'd been the only audience. Power is ready, Lena reported. But we need a target. A focal point. Elias pointed at the viewport. There. The accretion disk. Vent the energy into it. Lena's eyes widened. Sir, that'll destabilize the disk. We could trigger a cascade. Exactly, Elias said. Do it. The energy vent roared to life, a torrent of raw power surging toward the accretion disk. Outside, the Luminari recoiled, their forms flickering. The black hole's gravitational pull twisted the energy into a spiral, creating a distortion in space-time. The accretion disk glowed brighter, a supernova in miniature. What's happening? Lena asked, her voice tight. They're being pulled in, Elias said. The energy is disrupting their resonance. They're losing cohesion. The Luminari towered over the station, their forms wavering. One of them let out a piercing shriek, a sound that vibrated through the hull, making the metal groan. The others followed suit, their harmonies disintegrating into chaos. It's working, Lena breathed. They're in pain. Elias didn't smile. He'd seen pain before. The Luminari weren't feeling pain. They were unraveling. Their energy was being absorbed by the black hole, torn apart by the gravitational forces. But they were fighting back, lashing out with bursts of radiation that slammed into the Vigilance. Brace for impact, Elias yelled. The station shuddered as the energy hit. Alarms blared, lights died, and the viewport cracked, spiderwebbing across the surface. Lena cried out as a console exploded, showering her with sparks. Status report. Elias demanded, pulling her to safety. Life support is failing, she gasped. Hull integrity at 40%. The Luminari were weakening, but they weren't gone. One of them surged forward, a wave of pure light that engulfed the viewport. For a moment, Elias saw it clearly, not as a being, but as a pattern, a frequency, a resonance. Of course, he muttered. They're not just feeding. They're learning. The Luminari were adapting. They'd absorbed the Vigilance's energy, and now they were mimicking it. The wave of light that hit the station wasn't just an attack. It was a copy of the station's power systems, inverted and amplified. Cut the vent, Elias ordered. Now, Lena scrambled to obey. The energy flow ceased, and the accretion disk dimmed. But the Luminari's attack continued, a perfect imitation of the station's energy, but far more powerful. They're using our own power against us, Lena whispered, her face pale. Elias stared at the Luminari, his mind racing. The Event Horizon protocol had failed. The Luminari had turned it against them. But there was another way. A way he'd kept secret, a way born from 20 years of hatred. Prepare the secondary system, he said. The secondary system was the Vigilance's last line of defense, a weapon Elias had designed himself. It was a device that emitted a specific frequency, a harmonic resonance that disrupted the Luminari's energy patterns. It was experimental, untested, and dangerous, but it was all they had left. Sir, the secondary system is offline, Lena reported. The blast damaged the conduits. Then we'll repair it, Elias said, already moving toward the maintenance bay. Come with me. The station lurched again as another wave of Luminari energy hit. The lights flickered, and the emergency sirens wailed. Lena followed Elias, her steps unsteady. She was young, brilliant, but untested. She didn't understand the depth of the Luminari's threat. She didn't know what they'd done. The maintenance bay was a mess of sparks and twisted metal. Elias ignored the debris, his eyes fixed on the secondary system, a cylindrical device humming with unstable energy. Its casing was cracked, wires dangling like exposed nerves. Help me reroute the power, Elias said, grabbing a toolkit. Lena hesitated. Sir, this is insane. The system could overload. Everything is insane, Elias snapped. Just do it. They worked in silence, the only sounds the hum of the device and the station's groans. Elias's hands moved with practiced precision, his mind elsewhere. He remembered the first Luminari encounter, the way the beings had resonated with the ship's core, turning it into a weapon. They were parasites, feeding on energy and growing stronger. And now, they were doing the same to the Vigilance. Power is rerouted. Lena said, wiping sweat from her brow. But it's unstable. We only have one shot. Elias nodded. He adjusted the device's frequency, dialing it to match the luminari's resonance. It was a delicate balance. Too high, and the device would explode. Too low, and it would have no effect. Ready? He asked. Lena swallowed hard. As ready as I'll ever be. Elias activated the device. A low hum filled the bay, vibrating in their bones. Outside, the luminaries shrieked, their forms distorting. The harmonic resonance was working, but it was also drawing them closer. They were being pulled toward the station, their energy converging on the maintenance bay. They're coming, Lena whispered. Elias didn't flinch. He'd waited 20 years for this moment. The luminari had taken everything from him. His crew, his ship, his sanity. Now, he would take something from them. Brace yourself, he said. The luminari descended on the maintenance bay like a storm of light. Their forms swirled around the device, their resonance growing louder, more chaotic. The hum of the secondary system drowned out everything else, a piercing shriek that made the metal walls vibrate. Lena clutched her ears, her face contorted in pain. Sir, it's too much. The device can't hold. Elias ignored her, his eyes locked on the luminari. He saw them now, not as towering beings, but as collections of energy, bound by frequency. The harmonic resonance was disrupting that frequency, tearing them apart from the inside. But they were fighting back, lashing out with bursts of pure energy that slammed into the bay's walls. Keep it focused, Elias yelled over the noise. Lena nodded, her fingers flying across a console. The device hummed louder, the light from the luminari flickering. One of them let out a piercing shriek, its form collapsing inward. For a moment, Elias saw it clearly, a core of pure energy, pulsing like a heart. That's it, he muttered. The nucleus. The luminari weren't just energy, they had a center, a focal point where their consciousness resided. If they could destroy that, the rest would follow. Target the nucleus, Elias ordered. Lena adjusted the device, the hum shifting to a higher pitch. The luminari screamed, their forms writhing in agony. One of them collapsed entirely, its energy dissolving into the air. But the others were regrouping, their resonance strengthening. They're adapting again, Lena said, her voice trembling. Elias gritted his teeth. The luminari were learning, evolving. They'd survived the harmonic resonance by isolating their nuclei. Now, they were shielding them, creating a barrier of pure energy. We need to bypass the shield, Elias said. Find a frequency that can penetrate it. Lena's fingers moved across the console, her brow furrowed in concentration. I'm trying, but the math it's impossible. The shield is too complex. Elias stared at the luminari, his mind racing. They were smarter than he'd given them credit for. They weren't just animals, they were thinkers, planners. And they were toying with him, drawing out the fight, savoring his fear. Then we'll give them something else to think about, Elias said. He grabbed a plasma cutter from the toolkit, its blade glowing with unstable energy. Sir, what are you doing? Lena asked. Elias didn't answer. He walked toward the luminari, the plasma cutter raised. The beings recoiled, their forms flickering. They didn't understand. They saw a human, a fragile creature of flesh and blood. They didn't see the weapon in his hand, or the hatred in his eyes. Elias lunged, the plasma cutter's blade slicing through the air. The luminari shrieked as the energy hit their shield, the blade dissolving on contact. But it was a distraction. While they focused on him, Lena worked frantically at the console, her fingers blurring across the controls. Sir, the shield frequency is shifting, she yelled. It's adapting to the plasma. Elias dodged a burst of luminari energy, the heat searing his suit. He ducked behind a twisted console, the metal groaning under the strain. The luminari were closing in, their forms swirling like a vortex of light. He could feel their resonance, a collective consciousness probing his mind, tasting his fear. Keep working, Elias yelled back. Lena nodded, her face streaked with sweat and soot. I need more time. The shield is too complex. Elias peered around the console, his eyes scanning the luminari. They were beautiful in their destruction, their light casting eerie shadows on the walls. But he saw past the beauty, to the core of their being, their hunger, their arrogance. They thought they were untouchable, invincible. Then we'll give them something to touch, Elias muttered. He grabbed a spare power cell from the toolkit, its casing cracked, its energy unstable. It was a bomb, waiting to go off. Sir, no. Lena cried. That'll take us all out. Elias ignored her. He primed the power cell, its hum growing louder. Then, he hurled it into the center of the Luminari swarm. The beings recoiled as the cell hit their shield, the energy flaring. For a moment, the shield flickered, its frequency destabilizing. Lena saw it, her eyes widening. Now, she screamed. She slammed her fist on the console, the secondary device whining to life. The harmonic resonance surged, tearing through the weakened shield. The Luminari shrieked, their forms collapsing inward. One by one, they unraveled, their energy dissolving into the air. When it was over, the bay was silent. Only the hum of the device and the crackle of dying fires remained. Lena slumped against the console, gasping for air. Elias stood amidst the wreckage, the plasma cutter still in his hand. They'd done it. The Luminari were gone. The Vigilance was dead. The station's systems were failing, life support barely holding on. The viewport was shattered, the black hole's maw visible through the cracks. But they were alive. Commander, we have to abandon ship, Lena said, her voice weak. The hull integrity is critical. Elias nodded. He looked at the secondary device, its casing melted, its energy spent. It had worked. The Luminari were gone. But the cost was high. The Vigilance was a tomb. Prepare the escape pods, he said. But first, we need to send a message. Lena frowned. A message? To who? To them, Elias said, gesturing at the black hole. To anyone who comes after us. He walked to the console, his fingers moving across the keyboard. He typed a single message, simple but clear. Asterisk, the Luminari are real. They feed on energy. They are not to be trusted. Asterisk. He sent it, the signal broadcasting into the void. Then, he turned to Lena. Let's go. They made their way to the escape pods, the station groaning around them. The hull was breached now, the cold of space seeping in. Elias moved with a grim determination, his mind elsewhere. He'd won. The Luminari were gone. But the victory felt hollow. He'd lost everything. His crew, his ship, his purpose. They reached the pods, the doors sliding open. Lena climbed in first, her movements sluggish. Elias followed, the pod's hatch sealing behind him. The Vigilance shuddered one last time, then broke apart, its pieces drifting into the black hole. We're free, Lena whispered, tears streaming down her face. Elias didn't answer. He stared out the viewport at the black hole, its event horizon a silent witness to their survival. The Luminari were gone, but they weren't defeated. They were out there, somewhere.